Welcome to IT How To. Today I'm going to be recording a video on how to install Ubuntu 22 desktop on Oracle VirtualBox. To get started, I'm now going to log into my Windows 10 professional PC via Microsoft Remote Desktop from my Mac Mini M1. So I've got Microsoft Remote Desktop open on the Mac. I'm just going to go to my PC. I'm going to log into it. Then I'll open Oracle VirtualBox. I'm just going to ignore that for the time being. So on Oracle VirtualBox, I've already got quite a few virtual machines already set up. So what I'm going to do is to actually do a new installation for Ubuntu 22 desktop. So I've got that already there, but I'm going to do a fresh install, then walk you through the process. To get started, I will go to Tools at the top left, then click on New on the right hand side. For the name of the virtual machine, I'm going to type in Ubuntu 22 desktop vanilla. I'm going to set the location for where I want to install it to. So I've actually got an SSD drive which is mapped to drive S, so I'm going to install it there. And VirtualBox VM, I'm just going to ignore that message on the bottom right. Select that folder. For memory size, I'm going to allocate 6 GB of RAM, which equates to 6,144 megabytes. Then I'll click on Create to continue. On the next screen, I'm going to set the actual location for the actual virtual disk file, which will be also in the S drive. For file size, I'm going to allocate 100 GB of RAM. I will leave the hard disk file type as default for VDI. On the right hand side, I can choose to either dynamically allocate the storage or choose a fixed size. I'm going to choose dynamically allocating the storage. What this means is it will create a small hard disk, and then it will automatically increase that virtual disk image size when I'm working on the machine. The performance will be slower than if I selected fixed size. What fixed size means, it will actually create a 100 gig virtual disk image file, and then that space is already used up on the host OS. But for the sake of this video, I'll choose dynamically allocated, then click on Create to continue. So the machine is now been created. I now need to go into settings. So I'll go into settings, go into system, then on the processor tab, I'm going to select the amount of virtual CPUs I want to allocate. So on this particular PC, I've actually got a 6-core processor with 2 threads per core, which equates to 12 vCPUs. So I'm going to allocate 6 of those. We've also got extended features which I will enable, including enabled nested VTX if you're using an Intel processor or AMD V5. For acceleration, I'm going to choose the Power Virtualization interface. I'm going to actually select KVM, so I'll ignore that message on the bottom right, sorry. So I will choose KVM. So I find when I select these options, I'll get the best possible performance out of a virtual machine running on the Oracle VirtualBox. I won't cover nested virtualization in this video in too much detail, but what it means is you can actually run another virtual machine within a virtual machine. But that does actually also depend on your hardware. So I can get nested virtualization working on this particular PC, but I've also got a newer PC which is running a newer processor, and that I haven't got nested virtualization working in that. So your mileage may vary. Next, I'll go to display and allocate the amount of video memory, so I'm going to select the maximum possible value I can, which is 128 megabytes. Then we will go into network, so I'm going to choose the network adapter attached to from NAT to bridge. Okay. What NAT means, it will actually share the actual IP address with your host operating system. If you choose bridge, it's going to create its own virtual network adapter, and you can then connect to that machine remotely from your host OS or from another machine on your network. Once we have done that, I'm going to click on OK to continue. And what we need to do next is click on Start. At this point in the process, we can select the ISO image. So on the drop down list, I've actually got the list of ISO images I've used before, which is including the Ubuntu 22 desktop ISO image. If you don't see it there, you can simply go to the folder on the right hand side, go to Add, then you can go around the file system to select your ISO image. As it's already in my drop down box, I will select it there. So Ubuntu 22 desktop, then click on Start to continue. So I'm going to select the first option here, which is try or install Ubuntu. We'll just wait for it to start up. So on towards the top of this window, we've been presented with a message that says the virtual machine reports the guest OS supports mouse pointer integration, which means I can basically move the mouse freely within the virtual machine and outside of it. On some OSs, when you put the mouse within the window, it will capture the mouse pointer, and then you have to hit the right control key to regain control of the mouse for the host OS. So I'm just going to close this message. Here we're being presented with a welcome page where we want to try Ubuntu. So basically it will load the OS without actually installing it, but because this is a new virtual machine, I'm just going to select install Ubuntu. For the keyboard layout, I'm going to select English UK, as I am actually based in London in the UK, then click on continue. For updates and other software, I'm going to go for minimal installation, but you may want to go ahead and choose normal installation. So what normal installation will do is install a web browser, utilities, an office suite, games and media players. With minimal, it will just choose a web browser and basic utilities. At the bottom, I'm going to choose to download updates while installing Ubuntu, and also which is highly recommended, I'll install third-party software updates for graphics and Wi-Fi hardware. This is extremely important should you choose to install Ubuntu 22 desktop directly onto a physical machine. I've actually got Ubuntu 22 desktop installed on my second PC directly. And this is these were the options I chose when setting it up on that machine. So I'll click on continue. For installation type, this is basically reporting it hasn't detected any other operating system, so I'm just going to choose erase disk and install Ubuntu. On my physical machine, which I installed Ubuntu 22 desktop on, I also had Windows 11 Professional installed onto it, so I was shown options to install Ubuntu alongside that. But for in this case, I'm just going to select erase disk and install Ubuntu. Then click on install now. We're presented with a warning, so I'm going to write the changes to disks. I'm now going to select the location. I'm based in London in the UK, so I'll click on continue. Then I'm now going to set up my user account. So I'll put in my name, put in Ubuntu 22 vanilla, pick a username. I'm going to set a strong password. Then click on continue. And so in the background, while I was finishing that off, it had actually already started copying the files, so which it's still doing. So I'm just waiting for that to finish. And while it's doing that, I'm just going to have my tea. So while it's copying the files, I'll just talk about Ubuntu. So there's different opinions in relation to which Linux distribution to choose. For me, I think Ubuntu is a great operating system to install if you're getting started with Linux and you want to start using Linux for the very first time and you come from another operating system such as Mac OS or Windows. It's very, very user friendly, very easy to set up. And it's a good entry point into the world of Linux. And so once you get comfortable with Ubuntu, you can always go and start looking at other Linux operating systems such as Rocky, which is a binary compatible version of Red Hat, or Arch Linux, or simply another flavor. And putting Ubuntu on Oracle VirtualBox is a safe way to go about to do that. I've actually been working with Linux for throughout my entire IT career, which is now spanned 22 years, and for most of my career I've actually been working with Red Hat Linux since the year 2000. I've also worked with its variant CentOS, now Rocky. I've also worked with Debian as well, also Ubuntu. And I've also started recently working with Amazon Linux's version, which is now based on Fedora. That's very similar to Red Hat as well, with Amazon's own software on top of that. But for me, it's mostly been Red Hat throughout most of my career there. So at this point of the installation, it's actually downloading the update, so we're just waiting for that to finish, and we can see the countdown timer here at the bottom saying there's about 10 seconds remaining. Also just a further note, a lot of Linux users, once they get comfortable with Linux, they do install Ubuntu or another version of Linux directly onto hardware, and then they will use another virtualization technology instead of Oracle VirtualBox, which would be QEMU or KVM, and that's been reported to run a lot faster than Oracle VirtualBox. I also do use QEMU direct on my physical Ubuntu machine. So if you're once you get familiar with Linux and you have it maybe on a physical machine directly and you want to do virtualization, you might want to start looking at KVM or QEMU as opposed to Oracle VirtualBox for virtualization. But for getting started with this, Oracle VirtualBox on Windows is definitely the most easiest way to get into it. So the installation is now complete, so I'm going to click restart now to continue. It's asking me to remove the installation medium, then hit enter. So let me double check to see if the installation medium is in the drive. I don't see it's in the drive, so I'm just going to simply hit enter to continue. And we'll just wait for the virtual machine to start back up. So I'm going to log into the OS. So I've now logged into the OS. It's going to ask me if I want to connect to my online accounts. I'm actually going to click on skip to continue. I'm going to see if I want to send this information. Yes, I do want to send this information to the vendors of Ubuntu. I think they're doing a great job personally, so I click on next. I set the default for that, which I don't want to send my location services, so next, and we're now good to go. The next part of this installation is to install the drivers to help this OS or this virtual machine to run efficiently on Oracle VirtualBox. So I'm going to go to devices, then click on guest edition CD image. And it's now mounted that CD image. Now for people new to Linux, this can be a little bit tricky. So, and I found the experience of installing these guest editions drivers very different from one version of Ubuntu to the next. I'm also being presented whether I want to install updates, but I'm going to install the updates after I've installed the guest edition, so I'm going to click remind me later. Now the next thing I will do is open up a terminal. So this will make it easier for me personally to install the guest edition. So I've opened up a terminal. I'm logged in as my user account. There's also a built-in admin account for Linux called root for people that are new to Linux. So if I wanted to run a command that needed admin privileges, I would need to type in sudo before any command I type. Now what I would do is type the df command using the -h flag to see my local disks, and at the bottom it's showing the actual CD-ROM or the virtual CD-ROM that's been mounted, which you can see here as well. So I'm just going to navigate to that using the cd command. Then I'm going to type in the command ls space -l to list the contents of that folder. Then what we can see is here we can see a script that I need to actually run. So to run that script, I'm going to type in sudo space full stop slash the Unix slash, then the name of that script. Then I'm going to run that script. I'm going to put in my password because this is an admin command, so sudo will ask you for a password. Then I'm going to try running this script. So I'm just looking to see what it's saying. Okay, so it's mentioned that it actually needs some additional packages for me to be able to run this script successfully. So what I need to do is to install those packages. So I'm going to run the following commands. So I need to install something called GCC make. So I'm going to go ahead and install those. So those are tools that are needed by this actual installer to install the drivers. On the previous version of Ubuntu, I don't remember having to do this step, but for this version, I'll go ahead and do this. So to install software packages on the terminal on Ubuntu, is sudo apt-get install gcc make, then I'm going to put in -y, which is to automatically confirm yes to install those packages. So I'm hit enter to continue, and we'll just let that go ahead. For new users, they may find the terminal quite intimidating. My point of view is, on Windows and Mac OS, from time to time, sometimes you do need to open the terminal or command prompt, and it's something you do get used to over time. I remember when I started working in IT 22 years ago, and I first started working with Red Hat Linux. At the time, the terminal was extremely intimidating, but it's something I got used to. What I'm pleased to say, though, in the modern era, working with a terminal, you don't need to work with the terminal on a desktop OS as much as you need to, as in the old days. Okay, so going back to this, GCC and make are now installed. I'm now going to try and run the installer. So I'm going to go back, type in the command sudo space in the name of the script. So do that, and fingers crossed, we'll see if it goes ahead. It looks like it's now installed, so I'm now going to type in exit to quit out of the terminal. I'm going to go over to the disk here, click on eject, go to devices, go to optical drives. It doesn't detect the disks inside the drive. I'm going to hit the power button on the top right and click on restart, and we'll just wait for it to reboot. Now that the drivers are now installed, we should be able to get a higher resolution display on the virtual machine, so I should be able to run it in full screen. So I'm going to see if I can scale that up. Okay, I might need to log in first before I do that, so let's go ahead and do that. Try that. Okay, I've now got a full screen, which is good. So this is a vanilla installation of Ubuntu desktop. Next thing I need to do is run the OS update from the GUI. So let's go ahead and do that. So we want to install the security updates. So there's quite a bit there, so I'm going to go to install now, and we'll let it go ahead and install the updates. While it's doing that, I'm just going to open up the details. So I do like watching this, but that step of watching this is actually optional. You don't need to do that. We're now ready to restart because the updates have been installed, so let's restart the virtual machine and we'll wait for it to boot up. I'll close that message at the top and that one as well. And we'll log back in. So my point of view on Ubuntu 22 desktop, I think it's an excellent desktop operating system. I do also use macOS Monterey. I also have Windows 10 Professional and Windows 11 Professional, but I do like Ubuntu 22 desktop a lot. I think it's an absolutely fantastic desktop operating system. So we're now back up and running, and I just wanted to say thank you very much for getting to the end of this video. Please feel free to subscribe to my channel should you wish to see further content from myself. Also, do not forget to hit the notification bell should you wish to be notified when I upload further videos in future. And also, please feel free to reach out to me in the comments if you have any questions or ideas for future videos. And thank you very much for your time, and please keep an eye on this channel because I will be uploading further content in the near future. Thank you.